Greetings in the love and light of the one infinite creator. I am Andrii, and I am here today with Dan, Fred, and Adam, and we will be reading and discussing what will we November 9th session of and it's about exploring sleep paralysis, ego balance, and ancestral healing. All right. So, do we have Dan available? Or Fred?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Dan? Yeah. Okay, great. Can you read for us?
Let's see. I am on mobile. Let me see if I can.
Oh, you're on mobile today? Oh. Does someone else want to read? I think Adam might be busy. Okay. So, Fred, are you there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here, but I don't think you want to see me eating.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll read this first part for now, and hopefully someone else will come along.
We can, as we go forward, I'll be able to read more. I'll be able to read for you.
Okay, great, awesome. All right.
Hey, can you do it in your cool English accent?
I'm Kuo, and I'm with this instrument at this time. We are most honored to be called to your group this afternoon to feel your presence, to feel your love, to feel your concerns, to feel the very nature of the reality in which you live. We are hopeful that we may be able to aid you in this journey of seeking, for it is one that we share with you upon another level of our being. And we walk with you as our brothers and sisters, and we are hopeful that we can speak in a clear and understandable fashion that will be aided if you can see the words we speak and the concepts we offer as being an opinion that we have found to be helpful in our own journeys, but that may not always ring true to you. So please use what we say however you feel is helpful to you. Leave behind anything that is not helpful to you at this time. This, as always, gives us the ability to be able to speak more clearly and authentically to you. At this time, we ask if there is a question to which we may respond. Okay, I guess I'll read the question. Kuo, I've had a friend that has been struggling quite a bit with sleep paralysis. I didn't know if there was any significance to this or if she's blocked some way. I've done some research, but nothing of any value. Thanks. I am Kuo and aware of your query, my sister. That condition which you have described as sleep paralysis is oftentimes an experience one will have when those who may be considered the guides have a message that is deeper than the sleep and is not able to be perceived so easily as the dream. There is then the momentary experience of the inability to move the physical body, as the deeper layers of the mind are informed of the principle or a concept which may be useful to the one experiencing the sleep paralysis. This is a process by which the deeper mind may, over a period of time, be able to share information that may be helpful to the one suffering the sleep paralysis, but which is not quite ready to receive the full impact of the message that has been developed and delivered to the deeper portions of the mind. We would recommend that meditation be utilized as a means by which your friend may be able to reach as deeply into its mind as it is now able to do to receive greater and greater portions of the message that was given during the sleep paralysis. Is there a further query, my sister? Okay, so did you guys want to discuss that for now, or should I continue the query?
Okay, so my understanding of the whole sleep thing comes from my astral projection experiences. Don't know whether anyone else has had that kind of thing, but when you're doing that, one of the things you have to actually kind of look out for is the sleep paralysis bit. So you're supposed to kind of get your body to go to sleep, keep your mind awake, body asleep, mind awake, body asleep, mind awake, right? Meditate on just literally focusing on the chakras, cycling through the colors. So eventually you get to that point where you realize your body's asleep, but your brain's still going. You didn't kind of jump over. Okay, right, so imagine when you're awake, your conscious mind is aware and doing stuff, right? But then when you go to sleep, it needs somewhere to go. So the subconscious builds the dream world for it to go into, right? Now, the idea of astral projection is you don't want to allow the dream world to build its. You don't want to go into that imaginary dream world. You want to stay in the real world with the consciousness there. So then, once the body's gone to sleep, the consciousness can kind of peel out and actually go into the astral, into real world, rather than the dream world that's made. Now, that's also kind of the bridge between kind of lucid dreaming, which is where you control the dream world, or where normal dream, which is like where it's just you step into something created. So if your higher self or another entity or whatever else was trying to speak to you, lucid dreaming or in the astral or in that little gap in between is where they'd probably try to speak to you. So that's why I think that Quo suggested meditating instead, because then you can consciously connect and speak to them people rather than needing to do it from a dream place. Anyway.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I know for me, I often dream, or like I often take naps. Like well, this is a well-known fact about me. And then, but when I'm taking a nap, oftentimes I just kind of like lay very still, like lay down and lay very still, and like my conscious mind may still be awake, but my physical body is asleep. And during this time, I often get various insights and intuitions and messages from my spirit guides and things like that. And then that kind of like that refreshes me. Having received those messages, I feel better, and then I'm able to act upon the messages from the spirit, and I feel refreshed for at least a few hours, or until I have another urgent message from the spirit realm. All right. And so anyone else have any comments on that? Or here, Dan?
I just,
Go ahead.
yeah, I know I had a sleep paralysis event like recently. It was my first time having it, and I didn't know what to make of it. I just thought it was a negative thing. So looking at this session from Quo, I'm actually surprised and excited, I guess, that it's more of a positive thing that I just wasn't ready to hear yet, or maybe I don't know. But yeah,
The
I
thing
just
is, when people go through it, it's super scary. It is. Yeah, you feel like you are trapped there and you don't know what to do, and it's fear. It's like, oh my god, what am I gonna trap? But that right there is the trick. Yeah, if you freak out, then you are trapped there, and it's a scary thing. You can't do anything. But if you know that that's what you're looking for, and at that point you completely relax, and you know that just your yellow ray heart center body is going to peel off from the rest of the group and step out, and then literally, dude, just roll over and leave your body behind. It's the easiest thing to do if you know that that's what you're looking for. But you've got to get to that point. And if you're just at that point and you don't know that's what it's for, then you freak out, and then you can't do it, because then all the bodies are trying to move and it's all this energy going, it sounds like static electricity. It's horrible. And that's when most people freak out and stop. Like they see like creatures sucking at them and that. Like literally, you're just trying to kind of move out of phase. Don't relax into it. Yeah, know what you're doing. Trust, love, just that little ball of consciousness. Roll out of the body, and then turn around and you're laying there. Just you're there.
next time,
You're
yeah,
this
next
little
time that
ball
happens, I'm gonna do
of
that.
bouncing around consciousness. It's incredible.
Awesome. Cool.
So Dan, dude, seriously, you're on the way, my friend. Those little things like they're there to help you. Don't freak out. Love all the time, man. You get it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I was under the impression that the sleep paralysis sometimes, not always, because I mean they were, I think, talking about a specific scenario that they were mentioning. So that sometimes it can be the after effects of the when you go into certain stages of sleep, your brain is releasing DMT, and one of the effects of DMT, it shuts off your skeletal muscles so you don't hurt yourself in the middle of a dream. And when you become conscious in that dream state without, your brain is still kind of having a lapse of time discontinuing the production of that DMT or the release of that DMT. So you are still in a state of paralysis because your brain thinks you're still in the dream state. Excuse me, I think what they can call that theta. But I was under the impression that is part of the thing sometimes
Okay, Fred,
also.
dude, Fred. We are describing the same thing.
Okay,
if you were going to
it's
jump out
also
the top of your brain and go somewhere, what chemical, what neurotransmitter is going to get us there?
so my point is that it's also when that happens, that's a symptom, like an ascension symptom, I guess is what you call it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, let's read a little more. Here. There's just a little tiny bit more actually of this particular query. Do you think she mentioned that she fights it anytime she goes into sleep paralysis? Should she surrender? I'm cool and am aware of your query, my sister. It is a process that we would recommend that she undertake to do, as you say, to surrender the fear, the doubt, and the desire of not experiencing the sleep paralysis. To move in the flow with this experience so that those deeper portions of her mind may be able to expand their ability to feel the message, to be the message, and then to move into the higher portions of the mind to be able to describe the concept that has been shared during the sleep paralysis. All right. Yeah, I know, like, for me, I have never felt frightened of a sleep paralysis, but then again, like, I also didn't really ever feel like, oh, I want to move and I can't move. I was just like cognizant of the fact that my body's asleep and that if I try to wiggle it right now, I'm gonna wake it up. Kind of thing. Like, I'm aware that there's kind of like a process to waking up the body and it's not instant, kind of thing, if you know what I mean.
You're almost too aware, dude.
Well, but I have not done the out of body stuff in since I was a child, because for whatever reason I don't feel quite comfortable with it.
It's really weird because I had kind of that stuff when I was a kid, but I just thought that was like dreaming. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm assuming it's because of specific herbs that I might, put into my nervous system. But I don't really remember my dreams very much. So dreaming for me is quite an alien thing. Now, the thing that I find so remarkable about when you have an astral projection experience is how different to dreaming it is. Because it's just nothing like a dream. There's none of the kind of weird little choppy discontinued bits. It's incredibly linear. It's very, very structured and real, and I have full recollection of it, like every single detail, like every part of it, which is totally different to dreams for me. I don't really remember dreams ever, but it's a long process getting to actually do it. So it's only something that I've kind of learnt or taught myself to do, rather than something I used to do and don't anymore, I suppose.
Hey, I just got this idea. Maybe, if that Colorado group is doing a challenge, maybe we could do a challenge sometime too.
I'd be so up for that, dude.
Yeah?
I was seriously going to suggest it. We should.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean,
like,
have no
we know
one
the
here
material
to do it with.
We know
it
the
says
good
how critical
questions.
it is to have 3 people.
Yeah.
One person can fool themselves. 2 people, you can get kind of caught in a loop. Yeah, 3 people kind of breaks that. So
well, you need a battery, a questioner, and a channel.
Yeah, but I mean, even if all 3 people are channels, like that's one of the things the Colorado group was saying is you need to have that 3 working together.
Yeah,
even
but
if whatever
you
take on each role at a time, it doesn't matter really. You just need to have units of 3s.
Yes,
to build
you can
the
still
structures.
have the channel move from one person to another, but that just switches their roles.
Exactly.
So the person who's not channeling, one of them is a battery and the other is the questioner.
But you always need to have 3.
Yes,
Now, I
exactly. You
feel
need
kind
at
of
least 3.
isolated here as my own little solitary seeker. You know,
Mhm.
so I don't know
We could definitely
how
do
that
it
would
over the
work.
internet.
Would that work over the internet? Would we all
Yes.
just LBRP?
Yes.
Adam, where's our LBRP expert?
Well, I don't know what a LBT expert
It's
is.
just
It's the
it's
protection
basically a
ritual that
protection ritual.
that Carla and Don did to sanctify the area to do the Ra channeling, to
Yeah.
protect
Okay,
them from the spirits, from the negative entities.
It
you
was
know, you're doing Shabbat. You know, at the end of the day, I'm about to do it right now in front of y'all.
But
But
that's your specific version of the same thing. That's all called Kabbalistic, right?
it's not capitalistic. It's what
No,
I
no,
was.
Kabbalistic,
Kabbalistic.
as in like Kabbalah, as in
Like
like
Yeah,
Kabbalah.
the Hebrew
from Kabbalah.
magic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So the LBRP is rooted in that same thing, anyway, dude.
right there. I heard.
You resonate the 4 angel names, the 4 names of God in the corners, to build an inner and outer temple to protect you and sanctify the area so that it's clear for channeling. You know,
Yeah,
that's the point.
it definitely brings me everything from you know, from the good, and maybe sometimes bad. Sometimes it might just bite up and just bite me, but
Hey, look, dude.
it
You know,
probably
we've got to learn to embrace the sisters of sorrow, wherever it is that Quo talks about. You know, that it's just as important as the joy.
So what I wanted to get back to is the battery and the 3 channelings. You
Yeah.
always have your source, right? That's a battery.
No,
That
the
only makes
battery. Oh,
sense.
the bat-
So friggin' you have your source, and then you have, you know, 3, 4 other people: Ed, Fred, Dan, Adam, you know, Andrii, friggin', and that's where the source comes from. You know, I'm only
Could I
here just
clarify? Could I clarify?
yeah.
Okay. So they have different functions. The channel is the person talking, or channeling the entity, whereas the questioner is the person asking the question, and then the
Okay,
battery is a person that is meditating, and they are maintaining the energies in the room.
okay, that's normal.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can have many batteries. You can have multiple people who are dedicated to the purpose of maintaining the energy in the room. And ideally, they wouldn't be distracted on their phone or things like this.
And I agree with you. And think about walking down the
At least
street
during the channeling.
and what about channeling?
I mean, like, they wouldn't be distracted on their phone. They would be focused on the session to help maintain the energies so they don't get discombobulated. You know what I mean?
The other thing I really like that Ra's described is building structures like crystals out of a group. You know, so everyone having their own place, knowing their job inside the resonant structure that the people are making. You know, I love the kind of the geometries that he suggests you can make with consciousness. You know, I would
right.
love to try any of that stuff.
Dovetails into the next query here. So let's do that. All right, Fred, are you ready to do some reading? Okay.
I suppose I could. Give me one second.
Are you still eating? Oh, okay. If you're still eating, I can.
Yeah, you can read the question.
Okay. All right.
Thanksgiving, but good night.
Hello, Kuo. What guidance can you offer one to align to their true purpose and enhance one's spiritual growth? Okay, Fred. If you're available.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my sister. In the same vein as that which we have just spoken, we would suggest 2 things of note. The first being asking that same question which you have asked us in the meditation, so that you may move into your deeper mind where there is information available from guides, from your higher self, from the Creator, that can give you images, paths to follow, words to consider. So that when you are in your conscious state, you may feel that those words and thoughts and images may manifest in your daily round of activities as opportunities to be of service. So if you're alert to how you are able to interact with anyone in your daily round of activities, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a stranger in any situation they may be experiencing, if there is the synchronicity, the coincidence of there being a need, then you are there to serve by fulfilling the need. This is something that is not always easily accomplished. For in your normal round of activities, there is often the moving at a pace that is so quick as to not be able to see or feel the world around you, the entities that you are with or see, so that you may experience some means by which to be of service. It does not have to be a great service, something that you get, shall we say, the merit badge for. But even the simplest service done with love and the desire to be of service is that which each of you are here to do. There are so many ways to be of service. They are infinite. If one looks with the heart and the eyes, the intuition and the desire, then the service will be made clear. Is there any further query, my sister?
No, that's it. Thank you. All right. Great. So who would like to comment on that?
Well, that's actually how my week kind of was going this week. I was so strange that for some reason, you know how you were talking about taking naps and how the mind is going crazy and everything. I'm going to stop beating myself up for taking naps, because that's exactly what you described, exactly how my naps are. My body's relaxed, like to the point where if my dog wanted to be a jerk, he could come up and slurp my face, and I'd not have time to react. But my brain is thinking, and usually I'm either, I don't want to say ruminating, but I'm organizing and piecing together things that I have learned and have already learned, and comparing them to other things. There's all kinds of shit going on in here. So I this past week was I was taking a nap, like half hour, 45-minute nap. And I just kept imagining, explaining to someone in the simplest terms possible, the differentiation going from the one infinite creator logos, the actual primary logos, and how it differentiates through the distortion of free will, light, love, down into sub-logos, sub-logos, down to how, we are. And I kind of ironed it out in my mind. And today at work, I'm in normal conversation at lunchtime with one of the guys I work with, and he literally asked, he was complaining about religion. He was raised in a highly exoteric environment, similar to me. And he said, how they never explain God to you. Like, what is God? And I said, well, what do you want to know? You want to know the Bible's rendition of God? You want to know Muslims' rendition of God? Or you want to know what I think? He says, I want to know what you think. So I told him. And he was mind blown with he's like, I understand what you're saying. He's like, there's no words for this one thing, but you can understand that there's something with no words to it. That's how you describe it. There's no words for it. So, when you're trying to, maybe we all need to do that. Maybe we all need to, as we're learning and growing and healing and everything else, we need to have time to actually compartmentalize things and think of how would you explain this to your child? How would you? If someone actually asks you, what does this mean? What, you believe in aliens? What's the CE5? What's law of one? Who is Ra? What do you? can you explain it to them in the simplest way possible? Sometimes
What's that thing about you can only say that you understand something if you can explain it to a 5-year-old?
Right. That's what you're doing. You're actually integrating what we've learned. It's not that you don't understand it or you don't believe it. It's just that when you are able to think about things in a calm state where you're relaxing your body, you're allowing your thinking mind to intermingle with your subconscious mind with, kind of play with ideas, and you're able to come up with, in your own way, your own flavor, ways to explain, and also too, you can kind of see BS when you're doing that. When you're remembering something that someone tried to tell you, and you're like, you know what, that's not right, because if that was true, this wouldn't be true. And you can actually calmly think about things and do a comparative analysis in your brain, and then come out with the solution in your own words.
That's
And
one of the things, and why that's one of the reasons why I talk about Ra as like a framework. Yeah, as the information they give is a framework, and it doesn't matter what other piece of literature, what other seeking you go down, what other book you read. Yeah, it's law of one, right? Every single book you read will, if it's true and it resonates, it will fit in that framework somewhere. It will slot in nicely.
So let's start reviewing the what we read here. So ask the same question. So what purpose of life and all that? Ask the same question which you have asked us in the meditation, so that you may move into your deeper mind. Meditation creates a space for connection to your higher self, guides, and the creator. And I feel that taking a nap is about the equivalent in our modern day. During the meditation, ask, what is my true purpose? How can I enhance my spiritual growth? Trust the process as images, paths, and thoughts may surface, guiding you toward alignment. Recognizing the opportunities for service in daily life. If there's a synchronicity, the coincidence of there being a need, then you are there to serve by fulfilling the need. Just like Fred was giving an example of a synchronicity. And for sure, I've had lots of those as well. Stay alert to moments when you're able to help others, whether family, friends, or strangers. They don't need to be monumental. Even a kind word or listening ear can make a significant difference. Slow down to notice the world around you. There's often the moving at a pace that is so quick as to not be able to see or feel the world around you. Modern life's rush can obscure the subtle calls for service. Practice mindfulness in your daily activities to notice where your presence and compassion might be needed. And I find like this is often what kind of makes me tired, is if I'm really going on something like really hard, and then like with that rush, but there's actually calls for service that I'm not heeding. And so taking that little bit of downtime helps me reconnect with that. Embrace simplicity in service. It does not have to be a great service, something that you get, shall we say, the merit badge for. Release the pressure to achieve grand acts of service. Approach each opportunity with love and genuine desire to serve, no matter how small it seems. And trust your heart and intuition. There are so many ways to be of service. There are infinite if one looks with the heart and eyes. Let your intuition and heart guide you toward actions that feel aligned with your purpose. All right. When
So a couple of things, yeah.
Go ahead.
Like, do you remember the bit where Ra said about how there's 3 ways we can kind of grow? Yeah, we can, you can either meditate, yeah, you can pray, or contemplate. And I think that's what we're talking about here. When you're taking all this information, then you contemplate it. So the Hindus have got this really cool kind of way of like meditative learning. So when you're being taught something, the idea is you turn your mind off and you just take in the information. Right, then after the lesson's finished, then you do a thing where you sit down and you just meditatively try to remember all of the facts that were said to you. Then you open yourself up to intuition and you allow those things to integrate in a contemplative way in what you understand and what you know. And then they say that is the best way to learn anything. And I'm not going to lie, I think that's pretty spot on. And it's kind of similar to what we're saying here, right? When you take that stuff on inside, you really, really, really know it. So then, when you get to kind of tell other people about it, when you do get the opportunity to shine that light, You know all the answers because you spent so much time thinking about it. You know, and you've taken the information in, you've remembered the information, and then you've processed it. So then you know it. Then it's part of you, right? Anyway, what was the other thing I was going to say? I can't remember. Anyway, love you guys. You're awesome.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, well, yeah, I saw that as fairly reflective of our conversation there. Okay, so let's move on, I guess. Okay, final portion. Okay. I have been blessed to have learned the law of one, and I'm determined to be a vessel of love. However, the ego and shadow always wants to ride the vessel as well. Please remind us how one should ask these major catalysts. Thank you. Fred?
We are of Quo, and we thank you, my brother. We would ask if you could repeat the final portion of the query.
The ego and shadow also want to ride the vessel of love. Please remind me how one should address these catalysts, the ego and the shadow, which are in the way.
We thank you, our brother, for clarifying and repeating of the question. It is not an uncommon one among those among you who are spiritually oriented and consciously upon the path of responding to that calling of their inner light, recognizing, sensing, seeing, and being lifted up at all times into a larger understanding and vision of light that extends beyond the limitations and the distorted vision of that which you may call the ego and the shadow. And thus there may be a sense of friction or a sense of imprisonment and limitation by that which is recognized within as seemingly unaligned with the higher values, by those portions of the self which would react in ways that seem inappropriate or of which the self does not approve, those aspects of the self that may be self-oriented in a selfish sense, as you may describe it, or may react in a myriad of ways, whether in jealousy, envy, resentment, calculated efforts to find ways to benefit or position the self, in fear of loss or diminishment, or in the foundational fear of the ego, the separate self, of death or dissolution or end itself. Many of these strands that work their way through the many layers and compartments and complexities of the mind and the energy system in its chakras and balances. Many are the ways to block and twist and distort the Creator's light as it enters the feet and the red ray and moves upward. As we would remind each seeker, these are the aspects of a whole being, perhaps not integrated or balanced or healed or fully brought into the heart, but nevertheless aspects of the self. They are not alien implants placed within the self against the self's will in order to limit the self. Certainly, there are a variety of conditioning forces in your world, whether the intentional conditioning of the manipulation from the commercial or power-driven and negatively oriented influences, or the conditioning of the unintentional, of the simple blind repetition of the collective unconscious, which again and again repeats the refrain of separation, of a life devoted to the material aims, of grievance and victimhood and suffering, and a game of who is to blame and so forth.
Yes.
Legions are the sources of conditioning upon the self. But that which is called the ego or shadow is of the self's own making. And when much of the self remains unconscious and not brought into the conscious light to be healed and integrated, this may create an inner warlike condition. And we were previously speaking of that friction. The self may feel split, divided, or fragmented between competing pulses within the self. Not understanding why the self makes certain choices, perhaps self-defeating choices, perhaps choices that may cause harm to others in knee-jerk reaction, or even calculated, premeditated fashion, as the case may be. And the self which holds higher aspiration may feel beholden or shackled to some degree, and may wish only to get rid of these energies so that the self may be pure in heart and seeking. We empathize with the place where from this desire is born to be pure, to feel whole, not only so the self may be at peace, but that the self may be of greater and higher and even more impactful service to others. But my brother, we would advise that it is through this confronting, shall we say, not in the mindset of battle, but in the dedication to healing. It is through confronting and facing squarely and honestly these energies within the self that the self engages the path of peace and wholeness. And for every square inch, you may say, of energetic real estate or interior space that the self can make within the self for the habitation of love and light, the integration and understanding and making peace with and healing these energies with the self, that the self once again becomes whole, becomes that which it already is, dropping the illusion that precluded the sight from this understanding and radiating that outward to others. This purity of beingness with which you seek is a clear signal. It is a clear desire to invest one's will and faith in pursuing each day through these spiritual practices, through the examination of the self's motivations and intentions and experiences in relationship to others. We would encourage the following of the desire to be one with the self and not feel divided and split between energies. This is a path that is walked by the disciplined work in consciousness which seeks to bring into the heart not just that which is approved of within the self, but also those, you may say, dark corners of the self, those things that may be kept hidden from others, those things of which you do not approve within the self. It may be helpful to know and understand that all beings who seek the positive polarity, all who seek to build a world of harmony and clarity and mutual cooperation and kindness, all such beings have within them the antithesis of these energies within themselves. Even those who you may hold up as avatars of the spiritual journey, exemplifying that which you seek, also to emulate or embody, they too have lingering within the corners of their being, they say, shadow thoughts and shadow energies. But particularly for those who have had a significant degree of success, as you will, in pursuing the positive polarity, they have done great work in digging down into the mind of the being to understand ways in which they operate, ways in which they are. As the one known as M was sharing with the circle previously, the epiphany of the ways in which her emotions, sadness, and joy were associated together, and the ways in which they worked within her life experience within the veiled condition. Each generally remains a mystery to each. That is oneself to oneself, and doubly so for the other self. Great ground can be traversed, great progress made in understanding why is it that I am having the reaction that I am having, what may be the source of this particular perception, and so on. But what distinguishes the spiritual seeker from those beings swirling within the sinkhole of indifference is this conscious awareness which is brought to one's patterns. We would advise ensuring that when this work is undertaken, that the self takes a conscious moment to reflect and ask the self, am I judging that which I am witnessing as I look at these aspects of myself of which I disapprove? Am I having resentment toward myself? Am I withholding forgiveness from myself? Am I being kind and merciful? Am I accepting myself? Look for those small hooks within the self of judgment for the self. Whether the self is engaging in calling oneself unfavorable names, stupid, idiot, and so on, or recoiling, as this instrument experiences not infrequently, in the feeling of shame or having slipped up or said or done something stupid, as it may be described by the self. This orientation and way of relating to the self energizes and feeds that which you would call shadow and ego. It is counterproductive to the aims of healing and wholeness as it further solidifies and makes opaque the self you wish to instead render transparent to the Creator. It may feel like these things or energies within the self need controlled or fought or extricated or exorcised from the self. But truly it is by removing these mechanisms of judgment and coming into deeper compassionate awareness that the disciplines of the knowing of the self and the accepting of the self can be engaged so that the self is made whole, shadow and all, so that the self's vibration and energy rises higher in the chakral system, so that the voice of the ego may arise and inform the greater mind, perhaps even imparting helpful wisdom or at least information in terms of navigating the situation and empathizing with other beings. But the self need not be run or compelled or driven by these desires and impulses that may arise in the region of the being which you may call ego or shadow. Those blocked and imbalanced portions, particularly of the lower triad of light energy centers. In short, it is the work of love, our brother, of not withholding love for the self, however the self may be showing up. Whether the response was masterful and pure, loving and perfect, or whether the response was selfish or a knee-jerk reaction in anger. Bring that entire being into the heart so that those angry or wounded or shadow aspects of the self may too be heard by the self and be healed and relinquish their hold upon the self so that that stuck and fragmented and separated energy may merge back into the ocean of being that the self may feel oneness. Is there a follow-up to this query? We are those of Quo.
No, your guiding is much appreciated. Thank you. All right.
That was
So,
beautiful.
go ahead, Benny. Yeah, I
And
felt like
I'm
it
just
resonated
telling
with you.
did a great job, and for a little Jewish watchmaker, whatever, abortion guy, he's great.
All right. Okay. Anyone else want to add some reflections?
There was a lot in there.
Yeah, there was. We'll go through it with the key quotes in a bit. But if you had anything off the top of your mind.
Well, the only thing I was going to say was that completely ties in loads with what I was reading from the CES, the Colorado guys, and there's something that Litos said that blew my mind. I put it on the group earlier, and it was something. The fulfillment of self is achieved precisely in the apparent loss of self. That blew my mind.
Wow. Yes. So one of the things that I got through it is forgiving and loving the self and all the aspects of it. And in terms of what you were just saying, recognizing the self by losing the self. I mean that really has reminded me of well, first of all, Jesus and how he said, those who seek to keep their life shall lose it, and those who are willing to sacrifice their life will gain it. And it's kind of that way that I was reading also. I know Joshua mentioned this earlier about that he was reading in a channeling from allegedly from Jesus, that the ego is kind of entertainment. It is your identity and or like kind of, if you are upset with someone or something, then you can like ruminate on this upsetness, even towards yourself. And then that gives you kind of a sense of identity that you're this individual and that maybe you can do something about this. But then if you forgive that person and you forgive yourself, then you no longer have this inner monologue and this inner dialogue going on. And if you are on the path of, you know, Jesus' discipleship or the Confederation, then you're letting God flow through you, and you have sacrificed yourself, and instead you have become a vessel for God.
That's exactly spot on. The weird thing about this is, for me, it comes down to neuroscience. So there's a paper that came out a while ago called the Brazil study or something. Basically, they got people that claimed to be out of channel, right? And they asked them questions, they had brain scans, and they had to answer the questions written about whatever thing, right? So then, after doing that, they then channeled the answer to the same question. So the brain scans basically went down to nothing because these people are in a trance state. They were meditating. But the answers they give were better than when their brain was lit up like a Christmas tree.
Wow.
So this is the point. When you remove yourself, you enlarge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who knew? The brain actually slows us down. It's like a filter. It's like slows a limiting factor of what we can perceive. Not to mention that another bit of research that I read about recently is incredible. So it said that basically, when you actually think, when you actually kind of do the information, the number crunching, you don't do that using words. You do all of that in kind of neural computational processing that works in like concepts, right? Now, after you've done the thinking, so your brain does the thinking. After that, then the bit of the brain that processes language lights up and it explains it to you as an ego.
Okay.
So everything happens anyway, and then it has to turn it back into language so that your ego understands it.
You got to remember that our brains are not the source. Our brains are transceivers, not
No, but
source.
this is the point. Yeah, everyone can say that the brain's the consciousness is an emergent property, but it's not. You take the brain, the consciousness out, the actual processing, the actual conjugative amount that the brain can do goes up, like dramatically. And science is proving it now, over and over again. Woohoo! Go science! We'll get there in the end.
Can I ask one thing? So, let's say if you look it down and you take your eyes into your heart, right? And then you let it transmit to your brain. Would that be the same thing as consciousness?
Well, essentially, the way I perceive it is every single thing has consciousness. Every single atom, every single molecule, every single cell, every single structure in the universe
Integrated
has consciousness.
information
But
theory.
it comes down to what's called sentience. Now, sentience is the knowledge that you have consciousness.
It's the sentience. Let me
We are sentient, so we can perceive and understand a dynamic view of consciousness. But I'd argue everything is conscious.
Let me explain this, Dad. So the first D is atoms and protons, right?
They're conscious
The
too.
second D is fucking cellular. The third D is our world. Friggin' the fourth D is this. So I mean, either way you put at this, I mean, what is really inside us? You just coming from an autistic person, like
okay, straight up. Like Ra said in the first channeling, man, we are all just dreams dancing in a dream. Yeah, it's a big shared dream that we're all part of, but we're all being dreamed inside that dream. Yeah, everything's mind, everything's consciousness. All those atoms that you spoke about, they are all just graduated steps in consciousness, all the way up to God.
Part of the dream of Gaia.
But we're a part of the dream, but we're also in a physical world. So,
but that's because we are dynamic creators. We are sentient.
And then the 3D is what everything we see. So, I mean, what is that difference in the mirror? You look into yourself, and you have hundreds of choices, and you can make every single choice. But I think those choices are really what Ed is talking about.
Yeah. It is,
Being
dude. We are just the quantum computer that makes those choices. And once we make a choice, we create the universe in that position. So those
exact.
choices matter, dude.
And I have choices from other people that have, just destroyed me almost.
Well,
But
look. Own your sovereignty, dude. You can take the power back.
Yeah.
I already have,
Sure.
and
Very good.
I don't know how long I'll be here. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I surely do love you guys. So
You too, man.
Mhm. So here we can review now the parts of it.
Yeah,
Or-
Andrii, make sure in the review that you go in the first, I think maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs. They mentioned the legions being the
Okay.
source of something.
Oh, you wanted a review of that one? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted some clarity on that, what they meant.
Okay. Here.
well,
Here.
they're a source of ego and I mean, I really don't know how to put it. It's just, just kind of like a mistrust in choices. But let Andrii read. Friggin', I didn't even hear that part. So
Here, legion are the sources of the conditioning upon the self, but that which is called the ego or shadow is of the self's own making. And when much of the self remains unconscious and not brought into the conscious light to be healed and integrated, this may create an inner warlike condition, as we have previously speaking. As we were previously speaking of this friction, the self may feel split, divided, or fragmented between competing impulses within the self, not understanding why the self makes certain choices, perhaps self-defeating choices, perhaps choices that may cause harm to others in knee-jerk reactions, or even calculated, premeditated fashion, as the case may be. And the self which holds higher aspirations may feel beholden or shackled to some degree, and may wish only to get rid of these energies so that the self may be pure in heart and seeking. So basically, it is a fragmented or like cognitive dissonance point of view. But here, we can ask Robo-Ra as well. Expand on and explain this paragraph.
We love you, Robo-Ra. Yay!
Okay. Legions are the sources of conditioning upon the self. The phrase emphasizes the countless factors influence our behavior, thoughts, and emotional responses. These include societal norms, cultural values, family dynamics, education, media, and even generational or ancestral imprints.
Okay, that explains it right there. That is not what I pictured in my mind when I read that word.
Oh, okay. Well, I think, like, in the context of that paragraph, how it felt to me is that it is legion. Legion is the term of a Roman, where it's like 200 centuries or something like this, like 2,000 or 4,000 soldiers or something like this.
can I explain Legion real quick?
Go ahead.
So like a Legion is somebody that kind of puts ego before themselves. I walked away when you explained all this, but it's you have yourself, you have choices, you could be one within your own, but legions kind of just, I'd say they're like sheep.
Okay. Well, in the context of this paragraph, I know I've been in this place before where I felt divided. Well, I had basically a bad instruction manual on dealing with spiritual phenomenon because I was just like reading, it was like Robert Jordan or something. He was a popular fiction author, and like in it, he had this thing where, oh, it's like any thoughts that don't fit, just put them in the fire or whatever. And I tried that, but it's kind of like it's a never ending thing because you can't destroy yourself, and it just comes back and it gets worse every time. If you're fighting with yourself, then it just turns into an army, like a whole war inside your own head as you're trying to fight yourself, uh, in these various aspects. And it's that your fleshly desires and your holy desires, and they're all competing with each other, and then like you're trying to do the whole judgment and anger, and it doesn't work. The
You
only
gotta
way,
hug
the only
your demons,
solution,
not fight them, man.
yeah, exactly. The only solution is love. The only solution is forgiveness, love, and kindness, and accepting and loving yourself. And if like one of the things this that it mentioned in this channeling paragraph was that Gary, throughout his day, he would say, "Oh, that was stupid of me to say," or something like this. So this is obviously just like a bad programming, um, and it can only be healed through love. He has to learn to forgive, love, and accept himself, and be like, "Well, that was the best that I could do at the time," because if you allow yourself to be mean to yourself, then that means that you're allowing yourself to also be mean to others. Um, like Jesus said, love one another and love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And so, if you wouldn't say those things to your neighbor, you should not be saying them to yourself either.
It's so
You know,
weird because I'm like the guy. I'm so like the worst for that, man. I'd beat the crap out of myself and say things to me that I'd never say to anybody else ever.
yeah. You see, well, that there's a big room for growth there. You
Oh
you
man,
gotta,
hey, I'm trying. That yellow ray's a bitch, right?
yeah.
But
Well, yellow ray is your relations with other people.
that's what I mean. This is
Yeah.
how I interact with others. You know
Mhm,
how I shine that love inward in my
Yeah.
actions outward.
You don't gab, fucking.
Gab. I don't understand.
I mean, it's called the gift of gab. I mean, this
Oh
is a
yeah.
spiritual thing.
Sometimes I
Uh,
really wish I had that,
Talking.
man. That'd be awesome. Just talk you into
I
whatever.
Friggin', but it all comes from the honesty of heart. Friggin', you don't get anything from it. Most of the time they end up backstabbing you. So, you know,
Well, you gotta forgive and love them anyways. You
I,
know,
I, I do, but in my situation, I have to walk around places. I have to go in places, right? And these people all have something to say to me. You aren't his birth son. You have fucking all sorts of shit. Fucking
Dude,
and
why do you have to go to these places?
for esoterical
Why though?
deal.
Why do you need to go there?
I go there because I have to take my mother. You
Okay,
understand?
come on, like, how's that fair? She dragging you into all this stuff, dude? You'd be like, Mom, I don't want to go. It's madness. I'm not doing that.
I say that, but I still have to deal with them every day until this primal day where everything happens. But
Dude, I think you should just be like, Mom, let's just go go out for like a cup of tea or something instead. Let's just not bother doing that.
well, we're
Let's just go and
going to a
find something nice and
bookstore.
go and look at some art or some shit instead.
They got lower people working for them, off of egotistical shit.
Well, that
You
would just
know,
sound silly. Like, go somewhere else then. Like, surely there's like another town.
there
All
is
right,
no.
I'm gonna go over here.
well,
Go
he
in.
lives in DC or whatever. Anyways,
That's pretty much it. Or agua dulce, friggin'.
generally, my suggestion would be to forgive and love yourself to such an extent that them saying that has no effect.
It really doesn't, because I still go in there and I fucking smile on their faces.
Yes, and not just smile. You know, you could well, what I would do is I would respond that I forgive you. I love you. I see the divine within you. May you be blessed. May you open your heart and see the divine in all that is.
Then we will do this next week. I mean,
Awesome.
I'm really trying, but I really got the whole world against me. So fucking.
Well, it starts within. Peace starts within.
And
There's
there's
nothing that
a
we can
lot
do
said
outside of ourselves to
but
give us peace.
it's just like we're waiting for that moment. Freaking where Andrei's gonna throw up that Benny's acting like this, and freaking, you know what I'm saying? So, uh, I'm not trying to be masculine in this. I'm really not masculine. I'm like deneutralized to the point, like, all the women love me, but it's just it's just people that don't mean anything that really have something against me, and all the old ones are gonna let me just fight it out. So I'm here in DC for the next 4 years. I'm gonna fucking do what I have to do, but
Yeah. Well,
Well, you picked a good
give it a
4 years, Benny.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm going there on the 17th or 19th or something like that. Fucking,
give it a
Are you
try,
going to the
anyways. It's a
inauguration?
blessing.
they won't give me tickets to the inauguration. I already tried Jamie Raskins and Van Hollen. Fucking, they're senators and congressmen. But I'm going to his rally, and I'll be sitting in the front.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's
Yeah.
cool, dude.
hmm
I mean, I think there's a lot wrong with his hard line, but what I've seen, the
President
economy.
Elon, anyways, right?
Well, he's
Trump
Elon.
is just a
He's
figurehead, man.
yeah, fucking, freaking, but still, freaking, we lost all our value on our land. We lost everything, fucking, fucking. It's either win or lose right now, and I'm sure enough not gonna lose. And that is all you need to know.
Yeah, love is the way to win. All right, so
No,
Ed, you
it's
want to
love.
share with us what your rings are?
What?
You up?
Ed's got
It
some
is.
rings.
These
Oh,
attention
yes.
rings are made.
Check.
Yeah.
That one's got the Celestine, I think it's called. It's like a type of selenite that keeps recharging itself. It's got a cool blue color.
hmm
Another one here that's like adjustable, so you can kind of change the frequency wavelength
Cool.
of the resonance. So then you can kind of like adjust it to
Oh, I see. So that you can adjust the length of the antenna.
exactly as it is, and then it's like feeling all the how the
got a
crystals
high
vibrate differently
impedance.
inside it. It's cool.
Cool. All right. So, I just lost my mouse here. There it is. Okay. So let's did we want to read another one or continue the quotes from the one that we just read?
Yeah,
I
we
think
haven't
we
read
could
Robo-Ra
do
yet, have we?
I'm sorry, you both spoke at the same time. I couldn't understand.
Another one.
Another one? You want another one? Okay. All
Not
right.
of what we were just reading, though.
Not what we were just reading. Okay. All right. Another one. Okay. So appreciated. Where are we? Query may respond. Okay. There we go. I have what may be a follow-up to the previous query. As we deepen our understanding of ourselves and start to accept ourselves, how can we be sure that the ego doesn't grab a hold of this and create a bit of arrogance? And from your response, I think that you may say to love the arrogance and accept the perceived arrogance. But I just want a little bit of clarification. It seems as if you're stating to raise your level of consciousness, there can be bits of discord with people who are seemingly, and this sounds arrogant, at a lower level of consciousness. And I'm just not sure how to proceed in a loving, accepting way in those situations. Fred?
We are Quo, and we appreciate this query, my sister, for these are significant considerations to make and even grapple with upon the complex and difficult terrain which you in the third density walk. We would begin by sharing our thoughts, at least for your appraisal, regarding differentiating, or perhaps finding where they overlap, this energy which you call arrogance, and that energy which we may call discernment and clear seeing. It is entirely possible that discernment and arrogance may merge. In fact, discernment can be practiced upon the positive and the negative path. With what energy is this seeing imbued? One can see that, indeed, perhaps the other self is working upon more basic lessons in their journey. Perhaps they are living in a way which suggests to the self that they are in an unconscious portion of their journey. We would caveat this by saying that it can be quite difficult to know with certainty where the other self is upon their journey, what it is they need, and so forth. We would always counsel the humility of recognizing that the self ultimately does not understand. But we would balance that statement with the suggestion that it does not mean that one ought to abandon discernment or the attempt to analyze or intuit what it is that it is arising in the moment and what the situation needs. As we then return back to the thread regarding discernment, it may be imbued with an energy of compassion. If indeed there is a disparity between entities on the vertical scale of spiritual evolution, we may invoke the metaphor of, say, the 8th grader helping the 6th, or the teacher helping the student, and so on. The one with more life experience may approach the one with less life experience in the humility that the self is always learning, that the self is not omniscient, that the self does not necessarily have answers for the other self who is with the less life experience, but that the self may still exercise discernment in understanding what is the other self's level of learning. Do they understand the calculus that I have been trained in? Or are they working with algebra, so to speak? And thus seek to meet the other self at the level as best possible. With compassion, as we have described, in the spirit of teach learning and not learning for the other self in learn teaching. Understanding that even that other self who is less aware or less experienced or less studied has lessons to impart to the self who wishes to serve. Alternatively, in this scenario, the self may imbue that disparity of experience and understanding with arrogance, with a sense of superiority or smugness, that the self is intrinsically greater than or better than, and may thus look down condescendingly on the other self and convey those energies of superiority, and relate to the other self in that manner such that the intended service becomes confused and distorted, such that the recipient of this intended service receives the message that they are less worthy. How the other self reacts to that received message is their prerogative. It may catalyze a variety of reactions, whether they take that in and internalize that message, believing themselves to be unworthy, or whether they push against it in the affirmation that they are indeed worthy. Such are the infinite ways and complexities of free will dancing with free will. To address the other portion of the query, which is salient to keep in mind, how does one, to put it one way, avoid the pitfalls of the ego, of arrogance, and of self-superiority As the vibrations rise within the self and the awareness expands. As the spiritual seeker has likely encountered, there are those upon the journey with seemingly brilliant and powerful understanding and ability to teach, ability to meditate, ability to do any number of things, who may give an air and a persona of masterhood, but who may also give the sense of being, as you may describe it, egotistical or even megalomaniacal in great self-absorption, because as their journey progressed and they saw that they may have abilities of perception or of study and action that may differentiate themselves to some degree, the ego within them, you may say, began to whisper of their specialness, that in some way they were elevated above their brothers and sisters, intrinsically better, and so forth. It is universal that any self may have these thoughts, for that is the nature of a veiled consciousness, and a self which is not fully integrated. There are many temptations that are intentionally given to the self upon the journey, intensified by those of the loyal opposition, who may send signals to the consciousness of its own specialness, or eliteness, or its difference and separation from other selves, that may seem to arise within the mind of the self. It is a, shall we say, easy trap to fall into, or as the ones known as Ra have said, the pitfalls in the night are oh so easy. This portion may require a footnote, the instrument thinks, for there is fuzziness regarding the verbatim nature of this quote. In the interior privacy of one's mind, it is indeed a very seductive and tempting proposition, particularly because this notion of intrinsic elitism or superiority and difference from other selves helps to insulate the self from further self-examination and accountability and transparency. It helps to keep away the pain that lives within the self, particularly that original core wound of the separate self, and that lingering background feeling that haunts, even upon an unconscious level, the self, with the message that the self is insufficient or inadequate, insubstantial, unreal, insecure, afraid and lonely, and so forth. It takes great persistence, courage, and humility in the exercise of will and faith to face that part, that core of the separate self, and to heal that. It is almost automatic to want to look away and to want to find solution to this core sense of insufficiency through the outer world, through the filling of that, as it said in your Alcoholics Anonymous, God-sized hole with money or sex or status or power or any number of distracting activities. And thus these temptations toward the ego, as you may see, are another variety of avoiding this core work necessary for the self who wishes to realize the self as the one creator, which necessarily involves healing and rendering transparent this separate self that has run and driven that identity which has become opaque, that seems to keep the vision from recognizing that the self is the creator right now. You ask how to navigate these temptations which arise in all seekers' lives, these hidden thoughts or energies or senses of the self. And one way we may suggest, my sister, is to find some counsel, whether a family member, a friend, a professional, a mentor, with whom you can be transparent and share these thoughts with. One who you can trust and may provide a safe space that you can share the fullness of your being, that you may not be so tempted by these energies, that you may be more accountable to someone. You may also consider the journaling, the externalizing of these thoughts, that they may become, we correct the instrument, that they may be brought into awareness. For key to this process of balancing this normal energy with self is self-awareness. It is to the person who closes the eyes, you may say, and gives ear to the inner temptations and begins to believe in them without intensive reflection, awareness, and analysis, who are the most susceptible to that which would stifle their journey. As you indicated, we would indeed advise love be brought into this work, not judgment for the self, for judgment only further distorts the inner dynamic, but love with discernment for the self, for the seeker must know the self before and the self is being accepted. It is okay to have such thoughts and feelings within the self, and it ought to be accepted by the seeker. And my sister, if we may, we would also close this response in reflecting that by asking of the question, or more fundamentally, by the way we are able to perceive you, your own energy is set strongly upon the path of that which is not called to the arrogance about which you ask. Is there a follow-up to this question? We are those of Quo.
There is, but we're gonna review this one for now. That was a long one. Another long one. So that was interesting. It was about basically arrogance and things like that. What do you guys think? I know I've had, my fair share of those feelings. Because, we got like a really high IQ and all that. And so but yeah, there's that it's true, like it just, if you dwell in that, you just feel very separate from others. And so it's better, like I just found that to me, I don't look down on anyone, because I've come to realize that everyone at whatever level they are is the perfect gift to the creator. They are contributing a different level of experience, level that I cannot, because I'm a different person. And so they are intrinsically valuable. And it's important to have people of different levels of intellectual, emotional, and physical competency to have the great diversity of experiences that is humanity. And the most beautiful thing is, just love and kindness for one another. All right. So, did we lose Ed or Dan? Dan, haven't heard from you in a while.
No, I'm here, dude. I'm here.
Ed, go ahead.
I totally agree. One of the things I was going to say about this, the entire first chapter of the complete Golden Dawn book is basically Israel Regardie sitting there talking about how the main thing that goes wrong with magicians, with the main thing that went wrong with Aleister Crowley is egoism, is the fact that a small amount of spiritual understanding, of spiritual power, makes you feel better than others, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. If anything, it should make you feel more humbled, and you should feel a great responsibility rather than an exaltation above people. I mean, I feel like I've always kind of been, I don't know, aided along with this whole process, because I hate me. So it's very difficult to be egotistical when I'm like, shut up, Ed, you fucking idiot. So, it makes it very easy for me to balance those things.
Well,
but yes,
I don't know if I know, like for me at least, it's worth reminding me, that of myself, that I may think so highly of myself, in certain states of mind, but society really doesn't think much of me at all. I'm really not all that great, and there's lots of really smart people who are just homeless and dying in the street.
dude, I think you're awesome, man.
Well, thank you.
I love you.
We love you, Andrii.
Love you too, guys.
Yeah, I saw before I myself got involved heavily. Before I even knew what Law 1 was, I watched how one individual latched onto astrology and began reading it and studying it and understanding it in their way. And I was listening to them. I wasn't really studying it myself. But then I watched as they learned very quickly how they could manipulate people by changing and twisting information to get them to believe what they wanted them to believe. And the problems that it caused lasted for years. I mean, years. It actually, I wouldn't say that it was the cause of, but it did not help with the divorce of someone that was close to them. Caused problems with my relationship with them, caused a lot of problems. So I can't help but imagine that has to be an ego thing where, you know, you allowed your ego. I don't know what happened.
It sounds like a service to self thing that they were trying to use. Manipulating in order to control others is a service to self thing.
And have, you know, fun doing it, literally.
Oh yeah, then that's super service to self. Yeah.
I mean, that was like the whole driving force, like, oh, I want to see if I can do this. And then
that's, yeah.
Look, dude, remember, even
people,
praying to beat your enemies in battle is black magic.
What's that again, Ed?
Even praying to beat your enemies in battle is black magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can pray for them and you know, that may they have love and may they have kindness and may they recognize the divine within all. That would be white magic. You could still pray. You can pray blessings upon them. But yeah, if you were to pray beating them or hurting them, then yes, that would be black.
I thought you were supposed to pray for protection.
Well, you know what? The Greys do not agree.
Oh.
Well, because if you pray for protection, then you're saying there's something other than one infinite creator. You are giving power to the other side. So instead, the Greys promote integration. Well, I mean, there's many different Greys, obviously, but you know, the ones that I was affiliated with or am. It's really it's all about its confidence and it's maintaining those high vibrations. Those are the main
your
things.
Specific birthing pod.
Yes, from my specific pod. Yes, yeah, exactly. Because remember, like my previous 3 lives, I was a gray alien, and you know, I'm still somewhat connected to them, even though I'm in a human body now. So you know, I get some insights from them, like how I died. Apparently, you know, well, like my last life, I remember it, you know, quite clearly, because we were on like a mission to like abduct someone, and basically like some sniper got me in the chest. We were like in like line formation, and then like our you know, squad leader, he was just like yelling at me just as I was dying and like saying that it was my fault and that, you know, because I had doubts, you know, I had doubts about the mission or things like that. So I had allowed the possibility to occur, and now they were all in danger because I had let my thoughts slip in the wrong direction. And so
God, you're a terrible psychic soldier. God, your thoughts bombs betray you, Andrii.
Basically, that's what happened. But it's okay. It's okay. Anyways, yeah. Earlier, actually, I had met one of the, you know, the Greys with the big heads, because those are kinds of like the leaders. They don't go out as much, but you know, they kind of tell the other ones what to do. And then this one, she was kind of old, and she was telling me that basically my heart chakra was like very well developed, and so she felt that I was not long for their world, because it was kind of like their polarity. I don't know how service to others it was, but basically that I could be of more service on Earth, and so I just kind of like accepted that as a subliminal program, and so that's why I allowed, the doubts to creep in order
Wait a sec,
for
wait a sec, wait a sec. Are you telling me that you
yeah.
basically overcame their like evolutionary barrier purely by like just loving a bit more and letting your thoughts slip?
What do you mean
Surely
their
they could all do
evolutionary
that.
barrier?
Like, isn't that the whole point, that they can't step up any higher?
No,
So that's why they're having to do the whole like
oh no, the the
all
reason they have
the
to get
silly
all the
timeline
genes.
trickeries and things. They have to do that to kind of.
Well, no, the reason they do that is, I mean, there's many different grays, so they have different reasons for doing it. But the reasons these particular ones were doing it is because uh, someone at some point got them onto cloning technology, and
Yeah.
nature hates clones, and so you always need to have a feedstock of new DNA in order, because your offspring always has to be genetically dissimilar from yourself, otherwise you get into massive problems.
What I'm saying is that
Mhm.
you were basically like their Jesus mutant.
Well, maybe
Are you sure
I
you didn't change the whole morphogenic field of what it meant to be a grey, allowing you to reincarnate as a human as your reward?
it's actually very common. It's actually very common. Dolores Cannon has what do you call it? Interviewed many such cases. Actually, the
That's the only way
majority,
Greys can escape, by like becoming a human and exiting that way.
yeah, the majority of abductees are actually former gray aliens who have, because they wanted to abduct someone, and so they had to make a soul contract. They made a soul contract with themselves that they would abduct themselves and get their own DNA.
Oh my god, time travel's weird.
Yeah, and so it's also kind of like a karma thing. So that would be the service to others grays, and then the service to self grays, they would do that. The same thing would happen to them, but without their necessarily conscious knowledge. So their next incarnation, they may be someone that gets abducted a lot. But their higher self knows what's going on. Anyhow, okay, so let's review now. I feel like we've lost a few people here, like Adam and Dan. I haven't heard from them in a while. But okay, distinguishing arrogance from discernment. Discernment and arrogance may merge. Discernment involves clear seeing. Arrogance arises when discernment is imbued with a sense of superiority or condescension. It can be quite difficult to know with certainty where the other self is upon their journey. That's for sure. Humility allows you to approach the interaction with openness. Seek to meet the other self at the level as best as possible with compassion, for sure. Avoid speaking or acting in ways that might inadvertently convey superiority. Instead, offer support in the spirit of mutual learning. Yeah, like I often get ChatGPT to explain it to them, at what I feel is their intellectual level, and I feel it helps, because I can't convey it at every IQ level. The ego began to whisper.
Wait a sec. Can you do that? Can you be like, ChatGPT, write this for like IQ 90?
Yes, exactly. I do, like, explain this like for a 12-year-old, or wherever I think they're at. And actually, like recently, I had Grok do an explanation for someone who will describe themselves as a effing idiot. Grok did a pretty good job. Like I had to do some, several prompts to get it to say the message that I wanted to say. But afterwards, it was like it was speaking in that kind of like, if it had done this speech in like a prison or something, no one would have seen it out of sorts. It used their lingo and all that stuff. All right. So yeah. Was that Dan that I heard coughing? Okay. Anyhow, I see Adam's eating. It takes great persistence, courage, and humility to heal that lingering background feeling that haunts the self with the message that the self is insufficient. Yes. So persistent courage and humility to heal that. Oh man, I'm still working on that. You know, the self is insufficient. That's kind of like my life, the struggling with inadequacy and unworthiness. The role of self-awareness for key to the process of balancing this normal energy within the self is self-awareness. Regular self-reflection can help you discern when confidence shifts towards arrogance. Am I acting with from love and service or seeking validation or control? We would indeed advise love be brought into this work, not judgment for the self. By lovingly integrating all parts of yourself, you create a space of greater harmony and alignment. All right. Even the other self who is less aware has lessons to impart to the self who wishes to serve. Great. All right. So, if no further reflections there, we can simply move on to the next question. Okay. Great. Where were we? Oh, it's the follow-up. There's a follow-up. I think I do have a follow-up, as it is confusing too. Sometimes other selves may perceive things as arrogant that aren't. And it's hard for me to discern because I want to take into consideration how the other self feels and have them know that I don't think that I'm better than them. So the question is there a way to be sure that you're not being arrogant?
We are those of Quo, and we find that there is no objective way to know most anything in your world with regards to consciousness, which isn't to counsel the abandonment of discernment and reaching conclusions through analysis and experimentation. It is, though, however, to point to the subjective nature of one's perceptions and one's perceptions of another, in the fluid, multifaceted way that even words and concepts are used. What is arrogant to one person may be something entirely different to another. Perhaps those two are both seeing the same thing and reaching different conclusions. Perhaps they are seeing two different things entirely. It is a world of non-understanding in a darkened environment. But to the self who is attempting to understand the reactions that others may have to the self, it is always helpful to consider those reactions for the self. Perhaps those other reactions have no seeming roots in our connections to the self and its behaviors. Perhaps those reactions are a projection upon the part of the other self or selves, a reflection of much more of their perception of the world rather than how the self is showing up in the world. Or perhaps the reactions offer something helpful or even vital in the form of mirror to the self. For this is the fundamental significant portion of interpersonal relationships and their purpose in offering the mirror. That mirror may come in the form of the outwardly articulated communication to the self. But even more fundamentally, the mirror comes by the way the self reacts to the other self. For it is in the reactions, the responses, the choices and decisions one makes as a result of being catalyzed by the other self, that the self may see the fruit of its own beingness and who it is. For instance, the self may be convinced that it is an eternally peaceful being who loves all beings unconditionally, and then, say in your classic example, be cut off on the road and find the fist and the middle finger, and the shouts being offered to the other self. Thus, through this moment of mirroring, the self has seen that, well, there is indeed anger within the self, and so on. But in this particular case, our sister, it is, of course, for you to discern how best to approach this dynamic. Some basic suggestions may include the direct inquiry with the other self, or selves. Why is it that you think or act this way? Followed by reflection upon the self and asking if indeed there is any self-ownership that needs to be undertaken. If indeed there is any adjustment to behavior that needs to be made. If indeed there is a greater sensitivity needing to be exercised. It is the self really listening to the needs of the other self and attempting to meet those accordingly. Or is the self seeking to impose their own understanding upon the other self? Or perhaps upon completion of all of this analysis, the self realizes and comes to a conclusion that indeed they have not misstepped or imposed or infringed, but rather this other self is having a reaction that may be more indicative of their own limitations of perception. In each case, of course, the response is love, in the attempt to serve the self as the other self's needs, even if, as risky and complicated as this territory is, it is discerned to be a function of projection at some level. Love is the response, love and acceptance. Whether one embarks upon an attempt to find mutual clarity, to find what is true between the two selves, is a choice for those two selves to make. This is a common feature of the landscape of the intimate relationship, as this instrument knows well. The question of whose distortion or whose? Is the other self projecting, or is the other self seeing the self clearly? This can be a tangled dynamics, but with the heart open to loving acceptance and the Blu-ray fired up and the seeing of self and others with compassion and clarity, mutual dialogue can be engaged in mutual sensitivity to find out what is true, if indeed there is a willing partner on the other side. But if not, the self must take that catalyst alone into their own interior and work with it to understand the self, to find if adjustments need to be made or if something is being revealed about the self. To accept this catalyst and to move forward knowing that, whatever the perception of the other self, however accurate or distorted, that one's own self is forever an entity independent of the perceptions of other selves and free to chart their course of seeking the one infinite creator and serving others. We thank these questioners for their questions, and at this time we would transfer our contact to the one known as Jim.
All right.
Those of Quo.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Fred. Great reading. Okay, so what'd you guys think of that one? Personally, I always err on the side of the mirror. But yeah, that people are seeing that which they haven't learned to love within themselves yet. Most of the time, that seems to be what it is, in my perspective. Like when I see Zelensky saying something about Putin, it usually applies more to Zelensky than Putin, for example. But yeah, well, what did you guys think of it?
I feel like I should shut up on this one because I'm like quite clearly arrogant all the time. Like, whoops.
Wait, you said you're arrogant all the time? Okay. How about you, Adam? No, Adam's not. Oh, Adam didn't work. Okay. How about you, Dan? Are you still there? Or did you fall asleep? Oh, I think Dan fell asleep. Okay, Adam, did you want to say something now? No, we can't hear anything. Sorry, Adam. All right. Well, I will read the quotes for now, I guess. Unless, Fred, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, not really. It just, when so basically they're just saying that we when we're making discernments like that, if you just come at it from a place of am I being loving, or am I, do I feel like I'm trying to be superior, that probably should answer most of your question. But
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everybody still has a little bit of anger in them, and pretty much everybody's going to deal with somebody who can't integrate the information no matter what, and they're going to just get frustrated. So you just have to accept, that's part of the acceptance. You got to accept the fact that we're not what would be deemed as perfect in this 3D world, even though we actually are. It's just the way that it gets distorted sometimes comes out that way, and it's not your intention. It's all with your intention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pretty good
I
assessment.
just know sometimes I can be a bit like a sledgehammer. And you might have all these paradigms and all these things that you think are real and all these things that you think are lovely. I'll just come over with my sledgehammer of I can prove this, ha 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 ha, and I'll smash it all up and then rebuild you from the ruins. And I think sometimes that can come across as arrogant.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so let's have a quick look at these quotes, because this is going to be the last question since it's just past 9 now. All right, let's see what are the gems they have. What is arrogant to one person may be something entirely different to another. Perhaps those reactions are a projection, a reflection much more of their perception of the world rather than how the self is showing up. Yes, fair enough. For this is the fundamental, significant portion of interpersonal relationships and the purpose in offering the mirror. Yes, exactly. Interpersonal dynamics serve as mirrors. Exactly. I can wholeheartedly agree with this. Some basic suggestions may include a direct inquiry with the other self or selves. If appropriate, ask the other person directly, what do you perceive my actions this way? Or what could I do differently? Is the self really listening to the needs of the other self and attempting to meet those accordingly? Yes, because then you know if your service to others or not. In each case, of course, the response is love, the attempt to serve the self as the other self's needs. The questions of whose distortions are whose? Is the other self projecting, or is the other self seeing clearly? Except the relationship dynamics are complex, not always easily untangled. One's own self is forever an entity independent of the perceptions of other selves. Stay true to your intentions. All right. So I guess that's a wrap. Any last things you guys wanted to mention or discuss before we close the live stream?
I was only joking about the sledgehammer thing. Obviously, it's always done with like love and respect for other people's other selves, free will and things. Obviously, I believe that we've been lied to a lot, haven't we? Really, as humans here. So I like to level the playing field where I can and give what I have resonated to be truth.
That's
I
fair.
don't see that as arrogance, but like I said, sledgehammer.
Yeah, I know. I've given some people some hard truths as well. Like one of the hardest truths for many people to hear is that cancer is caused by holding on to resentment. A lot of people are very resistant to this understanding, even though it's a universal spiritual understanding, and doctors and patients all back it up.
Even more so than that, I find the hardest one to get through to people is that you pick your journey.
Oh yeah.
All this horrible stuff that's happened to you, all these things, all these like terrible stuff on the outside or whatever. You chose to come in here to do this. A lot of people don't want to kind of acknowledge that, but as soon as you do, that's what levels the playing field. That's what gives you back sovereignty. That's why I love the Law of One.
Yeah. A lot of people, they just don't want to accept responsibility. Like I saw a meme recently. There was a big lineup, and it said pills and surgery, and then there was what do you call it? No lineup. to a guy, and then it said change of lifestyle. Spiritual growth is hard, and for a lot of people, it's not something they want to do, but it is the only long-term solution. And the thing is that no matter how many pills and surgery you do, if you're not going to do the spiritual work, you're just going to have another disease and another disease, and it's just going to pile up until you're dead. Only doing the spiritual work will heal you.
I mean, even in smaller acts, even smaller, even than healing and all that, just having some kind of philosophical ethos that you can trust, that you can experiment, that you can utilize, was so incredibly powerful, because I think that's what has been hidden from us, and why there's so many people that just don't even acknowledge that that's what they are anymore. Because the magic's all been taken away. It shouldn't be. It should have been built up.
Yeah. Well, the magic is, I think, meditation
I agree.
can really help reconnect people with the magic. Mhm. Well, all right. Without further ado, as I found you, I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the infinite power and the infinite peace of the one infinite creator, the one within you and all that is, my friends. Adonai Vasubarados. And okay, the stream is over. You guys